And good afternoon, everybody. Today's Lunch and Learn series is our standard Friday, 12 o'clock meeting. Of course, it's recorded and can be viewed at any time. If you have any questions at the end, by all means, send me an email at the Dutch Mentor at gmail.com or reach out to me in any other way via the website is just fine. Today's conversation is really critical because it's one of the areas that we have found people struggle with the most, and that is having a vital conversation at the right time with the right people. And those skills are not necessarily built at the right time in people's career path. Often it's done through trial and error. It's often done by watching other people doing it, or simply people are avoiding it. And really, that allows then the team at large to undermanage or underperform by a significance. So, as a leader, it is extremely important that you want to establish a culture of accountability because that's the basis of performance. Really, we want to get to the point that people are self-directed and highly motivated. To do this, they have to have self-accountability. So part of the reason, part of the things that I do with the team in the leadership academies, I talk about your self-awareness of who you are today and what your desired behaviors are going forward, but it must be rooted in becoming a fully self-directed, motivated, and self-accountable leader. Meaning that you are keeping a close eye on how you perform on a day-to-day basis. You measure that in order to make sure that you have the impact. With that, you are required to have critical feedback sessions, both in the receiving way, in other words, seeking information from those that you lead or those that you report to, or those really to your side, to your left, to the right, and your peers, to receive critical feedback so you can continue to learn. But it's even more important that you are capable of providing critical feedback in a safe environment to your employees so they too can grow and learn to perform. One of the things that we talked about in past sessions is that we need to separate people's worth from performance, and that can holds true in the session today that we'll be discussing. At the end, I'm going to show you a video clip, which is something I've referred to on several occasions in the academy and with the students about the need to listen intently. And this will be a very visual demonstration on how good we are not at this. And this is required, especially for men more than women, so to speak, that this is something we need to exercise on a very regular basis. But let's talk about accountability. So accountability really has multiple phases to it, and it is represented in this chart over here that you will see and feel it on how well the organization does as you are looking at performance management, right? If you have performance management and just take a simple performance measure of infection prevention or hand washing, right? I refer to this often because it's such an obvious one. 65% compliance. Well, that is not very good, right? But that means that 35% of the folks who are supposed to be washing their hands are not. But are we holding them accountable, right? So that might be a defining moment for the organization. I suspect if you go to hospital special surgery, that is at a much higher level, right? 95% probably, because they make it part of their DNA, their everyday behaviors to make sure that this is one of those things we talk about all of the time, right? It's critically important to an organization to have zero infection rate. Strengthening relationships, people skills, emotional maturity, and trained to a higher capacity, capability and capacity. Again, being accountable is vital. Improving the patient experience. We don't make excuses, right? We understand what is taking place. We learn to listen and be accountable. Improving the support service, those people who are giving us, our suppliers to an end. And then how we change the culture from commitment and ownership, right? Again, that fully self-directed, fully committed type of an environment where we make no excuses and we take full responsibility. And where we show and love our people with abundance. So to put it into a different perspective is, again, something that I've referred to in the past, but this was a good visual, that we need to make a continuous assessment to where we are today. What are the results that I'm getting today as an individual or as a team or as an organization? And are we happy with that, right? Are we satisfied with that? But no matter what, if you're satisfied, then I suppose you have a culture of high performance. If you're not quite satisfied with that, that becomes then your current culture. Meaning that if you want to advance from there, we have to start thinking about it a different way. And I think that Einstein supposedly once said that if we do the same thing over and over and over and expect a different outcome, that is, supposedly, the definition of insanity. Well, think about it. If we stay in the current culture, if you continue to do the same thing over and over, you're going to get the same results, right? So again, being accountable requires you to, from time to time, to make a major shift. Right? You still need to rely on the experience and beliefs, but you want to take different actions that might deliver new results, right, into the desired or needed culture. Now, why is that important when we talk about vital conversations? You cannot get there unless you have developed the skills of deep listening and understanding and processing and relationship building in order to be able to really bring the fullest potential out of your folks based on their experiences and their beliefs. And that's really where the power comes in, when we fully enact everybody, right, from the ground floor all the way to the highest levels of the organization, is when we can bring the best out of people. It requires us to listen, to engage, to be accountable. And of course, it's all rooted in having really good conversation. So as a quick reminder, as part of the 4 responsibilities of a leader, we have to love those we lead, right? That's where we're going to becoming that genuine love, that brotherly love, the deep caring, going to where the work is and spending time with people, understanding their intrinsic values and needs and be able to cater to that. Leading to context and not control, or leading to buy-in and not control, explaining the why. Ensuring that winning environment, that win-win, psychological and physical and safety in the workplace is paramount in order to drive success. And then, using the power of focus. But all 4 of these, again, are rooted in good communications. And I've mentioned in the past that what are the 3 most likely failure points, especially in healthcare? It's failure to communicate, failure to communicate, and failure to communicate. So that's why we have to be different. And that's why it is so very important for leaders to develop the skills to be able to have great conversations. Right? So defining the quality of exceptional leaders, the ability to have difficult and sensitive conversations with confidence and positive outcomes. It really starts off with your behavior as the leader. Right? How do you position yourself as the leader? I posted earlier today in a quote from John Maxwell that leadership is influence. Right? The leader has direct or indirect influence over much that is taking place in the organization or in your department or your team. Even when they are not doing anything, they're influencing, not always positive, it could be negative too. So we have to be mindful how we position ourselves at all times. And it starts when we are holding conversations. A conversation comes with lots of anxieties. So I can be, a top executive in a company. If I get a phone call from HR, from the vice president of HR, who says, come to my office now, with no context behind it. If I'm a normal human being with a heart and a pulse, my pulse would be up by 10, 15 beats, and I'd be worried, what the hell did I do? What happened? Right? It causes unnecessary anxiety, or it creates an unhealthy work condition. Right? So think about that and how you present yourself when you have to have a conversation with your team. It is how you influence, how you position yourself right from the moment the request goes out. I'm 6'5", 280 pounds. From a physical standpoint, I'm a big guy. When I walk into a room, it is kind of noticed, right? Just on my physical being. So if I want to reduce that anxiety, then I need to make sure that I keep my proper distance, right? 6, 7 feet away from each other, or I sit down and be on eye level. Instead of having them come to my office, I go to your office. Right? If I set up a meeting, make sure that there's context in the meeting of why it needs to take place. And if it has such a great sense of urgency to it, and it is not necessarily a good conversation, right? Ask them, you go to them. And you can make an introduction and say, listen, we're going to have a difficult conversation today. The key thing that we have to always be aware of is the behaviors, right? It's your behavior and that of the recipient. If you are not positioned well and the conversation gets off on a rocky start, it's very likely that the fight for flight, right, that adrenaline that shuts us down is enacted very, very quickly. And once that has taken place in the recipient, not a single word that you say after that is heard. Right? So we have to be very aware of that. We have to come in a positive way. We need to come in with confident humility. We need to be sensitive to the recipient and making sure that we continue to make the right adjustments. And if you see anxiety on the other side, it's proper to call for a timeout. You're better to walk away from a conversation at that point in time and to regroup at a later time than to forge forward. So with that said, we're using 4 pillars. Right? So we want to make sure that we create this mutual respect, self-worth and performance are separated, that we remain teachable, open. We want to listen to what they have to say. And we go in it with the mindset that you want to have a common bond and a common understanding. Right? We need to sing of the same sheet of music. So these are referred to as critical drivers. And the best way to look at that is that the commitment to the win-win outcome is really about agreeing to find a solution that satisfies both parties. If you go into the conversation with a predetermined outcome, it likely is a win or a loss. Right? It's difficult to recover from that with a win-win. If you go into a conversation with an open mind, teachable, and as you feel and sense the conversation, you can steer it to a win-win, which can actually engage the employee if it is a negative conversation. If it's a positive conversation, they can have all that and more. Right? Have that mutual respect by protecting each other's boundaries. Now here I will say that we have to be careful that when you have cultural differences, often we manage people and we lead people and we manage process, we lead people from across the globe. Right? People from Europe are very different from South Africa or Asia or South America, or for that matter, North America. So be aware of that, right? And how you position yourself, how you address things in order to make the most out of the situation, right? And the mindset should always be of a critical conversation as to manage up before managing out. We talked about it earlier in the week in the academy about the 4 levels of motivation that comes into play here. The common understanding is really walking a mile in somebody's shoes. So as you give them an opportunity to talk and to explain, don't compare you to the person in front of you, but try to relate to what it is that they're trying to say. Both of you have a story. The more understanding we are of that, right? And that's why there's such a emphasis today on diversity and inclusion, is the more we understand each other, the better off we will be. The common agenda is that we are in the conversation with a common outcome, right? To grow, to be developed, to come out of it stronger. Right? If you go in with a mindset of punitive, that does not lead to better outcomes, even if the person is going to be managed out of the organization. Because when they leave the organization, they carry the experiences forward, and that could tarnish your brand, right? If you have a conversation that you can lead with a common goal, and even if it means that the person is going to separate, it is often done in a more civilized manner. And remain open-minded at all times. So what are the core skills that we talked about? It starts first and foremost, and we would say that's probably 75% of it all is deep listening. Listening has 3 distinctive phases to it. Listening is hearing somebody, information coming in. It's about processing information, and then about responding to the information. if at all. But you cannot listen, process, and speak at the same time. So the challenge that I'll give to all of you is from this point forward, that as you are in conversation with somebody, make an assessment for yourself. How often are you already formulating a response while the other person is still talking? And the clip I'm going to show is that men, more so than women, and that's done by research, not just because Walter said so, we have a tendency, we want to fix things. We want to solve the problem. And while they are speaking, we're trying to solve the problem. But really, the opposite party just wants to be heard, right? They want to share the information. So again, listening has a very distinctive role, and and a skill that you need to develop. I've been guilty of that many times, right? We have to make sure that that this is a continuous learning process. And very few people are on the expert level. Apologize when appropriate. We talked about that 100/0 environment, right? Being responsible as a leader, 100% responsibility, no excuses. Listen, things are going to go wrong in the organization. Things will happen on your team. You will mess up at some point in time, and that is okay. If we have set up a proper safe environment for our teams, we can and will fail. The goal is to fail fast and fail forward. The goal is to learn from our failures so we will not make the same mistake more than once or maybe twice. All right, so the leader needs to show some vulnerability from the time by having a well-placed apology. That does not need to mean that you need to become the apology machine. You need to find the right time, the right moment to take ownership, be accountable, take responsibility, and apologize, and then move on. But feedback, confront inappropriate behavior maturely. Here's that equation that I always talk about, E times R equals O. If you have an event where people are hooting and hollering at each other, don't meet that energy with more yelling and screaming. Respond to that, don't react to that. Right? Just because somebody else is inappropriate doesn't mean that you can be inappropriate. Right? If anything, you have to stem that and try to turn that around to make sure it's clearly understood that we can disagree. We can have civil discord. There's a time and a place and a moment for that, but we cannot allow each other to be rude or to have poor behavior in the process itself. Establishing a common bond, and I will talk more about that as the weeks to come on in our project development or in our team operational rhythm. It is really important that we find that commonality, right? That what brings us together. So we need to spend time on finding that common bond. Again, relating versus comparing is really important here. Establishing a common bond with a team is actually done through an exercise. I've suggested to the team members, this is a really good opportunity to do that shield exercise, right? Let everybody write down 5 or 6 things on a shield, on a piece of paper that it's exceptionally important to them. And have them read that back at the huddles or in team meetings with the notion of, you want to relate, not compare. And through that process, you will find that there's far more that we have in common. Right? And it speaks to value and worth. So when somebody is struggling with performance, it makes it easier to have a conversation with them and help them understand what it is that we need to do to raise the performance without stepping on their souls or stepping on their worth. And all of it needs to be done in a safe process, right? Both psychological and physical safety. It depends on how you present yourself in the room, how you lead off the conversation, how your mindset is on the outcome of the conversation, and allow for creativity. As we talk about the 4 levels of motivation, we're talking about requesting the people who are non-performing to provide us with a plan on how they can become a performing agent. Empower them to be part of the solution. Let them come up with the solutions that they feel they can make a commitment to today. It might not meet your standards at this moment in time, but it is a step in the right direction, right? It's about engaging them. You as a leader here, again, is recognition with abundance is by recognizing and showing a little love for every step forward. So with that said, deep listening is really the key skill here that we need to develop, right? All of them are rooted into that. So listen to others, feel heard, understood, and validated. In the intrinsic value assessment of your team members, it'd be interesting to see how many of them will circle the word "hear me." And a lot of frontline, team members, if you survey them, especially on engagement, is that they just don't feel that anybody is taking time to listen to them. They're not hearing them. Just because people, say something does not mean or require you to take an action. It does not even require you to solve the problem. The validation comes to the part of you taking the time to listen to them. Now, couple that with the opportunity to have an open door policy. It is not necessary that, okay for you to allow anybody who wants to come in and take an hour out of your day to sit there and listen. You can set up healthy boundaries. But if you have somebody who wants to come and complain, I always say, listen, you have 7 minutes to complain and 8 minutes to bring me solutions. But if those 7 minutes of complaining, you need to intently listen to that and sometimes read in between the lines. Because ultimately speaking, that's what they ask for, right? They just want to be heard. So I'm going to show you a video clip that demonstrates, this to a great extent and in a funny way, but it makes sense and it is memorable to the point that hopefully next time you are asked to listen to somebody, you'll remember this.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
I, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just.
Don't.
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can go on?
So how true is that, right? It makes me laugh every time I see it, but there's so much truth in this, right? It is that we have to really learn to listen to each other. And out of that, you have to sit on your hands, put a piece of duct tape over your mouth, I suppose, to practice this, but you'll get a lot out of it, right? So deep listening is a skill that you need to develop as a leader. So here are a couple of things, right, that came out of this particular clip. So an helpee is the person with a complex problem. The helper is the person trying to solve the problem, right? The helpee primary needs is they just want to be heard. They want to be understood and they want to be validated. The person that's listening, the helper, has a tendency to want to solve the problem, fix it, help it, and make it better. Two very different objectives from each other, right? The secondary needs is for the helpee to be helped only after they have been heard, right? And the helper often just wants to be appreciated for the help that they have provided. So think about that for yourself the next time you have a conversation, next time you ask somebody a question, next time you have a difficult conversation and you ask for somebody else's input, or you ask them the question, so give me your side of the story. right? To deploy these techniques of really sitting on your hands and bite on your tongue, and just deeply listen, absorb, process the information before responding back. It will meet the objective more often than not. So I'll leave you with this in a quick way of learning how to improve your deep listening skills. And keep this handy, right? Just try to exercise this. That deep listening is invite the person to share. Would you like to talk about it? So all difficult conversations, you need to give the person the opportunity to speak. Does not mean they need to have an hour of your day, but at least let them share their part of the story, right? Ask the open-ended question. Seek clarification, confirmation, and verification. Can you explain how you're feeling? Don't assume that you know how they're feeling. Ask for clarification. Validate the message. If I understand correctly, you feel betrayed. Is that technique I talked about earlier? Is the ask, tell, ask, right? Always confirm. This is what I heard. This is what I understood out of it? Is that correct? This gives them the opportunity to make changes or clarifications that help you understand to a deeper level. Use the independent conjunction and to make a point of disagreement. You make a strong point and I disagree. Again, you validate before you give your opinion. Be empathetic. You are angry because you were passed over for a job promotion that you deserved. Right? Walk a mile in their shoes. What would it feel like to them? And then sometimes just listening to them is enough. You can, and especially there's a sensitive area, you can't make promises you can't keep, right? Summarize to confirm understanding of the message. Let me make sure I understand how this fits together. Again, use that ask, tell, ask technique. And then confront inappropriate behavior maturely. When you swear at me, I feel angry. Right? It talks about, your actions have real consequences. When we talk about the 4 levels of motivation, is when you want to make sure that the party you're talking to understands that, what is the impact of their behavior. Right? By stating it and then stating after what the consequence, what is the impact on you, is that much more powerful. So we are at the bottom of the hour. I'm going to stop the recording and then you can see if anybody has any questions. Let me just stop.